I really didn't see that coming anymore.
Well,
Amazing.
This is truly shocking, and not in 39 months have we seen such an event. Who had the black pieces? Obviously, it's world number one, Magnus Carlsen. He's playing against Jordan van Foreest, a guy who's come on leaps and bounds in recent times. He opens with the good old-fashioned king pawn, and Magnus wants a fight. Kicks back with the Sicilian. It's a tournament in Malmo, Sweden. Classical time control. We haven't seen Magnus doing this for yonks, but he wanted an over the board one. He defends his pawn now, does Jordan, and Magnus signals a big fight with the Najdorf on the board here and f4. Known as the Amsterdam variation, true to form, Jordan is a Dutchman. Now we see Magnus play this classic Najdorf move. He kicks back the knight, and now he goes bishop e7. If you try and go f5 and pawn storm, well, black can fight back with d5 very quickly. So instead we get takes. Hang on a minute, may we? This is Magnus. Do you really want the queens off the board so early? Well, Jordan's saying, look, I'm getting some pressure now. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 still stuck on the back rank. And what's your next move? How do you want to develop here? Many options, very rich position. Magnus burns 25 minutes going bishop e6. He's showing a little bit of rust here. Magnus Rusterson. Knight c5's played. Hits a pawn, hits a bishop. You could drop back. But instead we see this response, going for a change of pawn structure, potentially, but giving up the bishops and asking Jordan questions now. He burns a bunch of time. You know, does he want to take this pawn? Well, Magnus's point is that after takes, the e-pawn drops. It's a different game. You could also take here, make a mess of the structure. But after all things considered, Jordan decides on this one, just cover his centre, get his bits out. Now we see the bishop back up, and don't worry, Magnus is not resigning, setting up for the next game. It's a long fight, it's an epic fight. This bishop now has to back off, or does it? Magnus gives up the bishop bear. Jordan's got these lasers for a long time now, but in return, he gets a compromised structure, a pawn to attack. Bishop d7 now played. Knight a5 once more. This one bounces round, cementos everything, and we do now see an exchange of prisoners. Lots of imbalance going on right from the offset. The game's hotting up, and the big problem for Magnus is that even after knight d7, he still can't quite complete that development. You know, he can't castle, or his knight drops. We see castles from Jordan. This is why Magnus doesn't touch the pawn. When you run it with the engine, it's a playable move, but you've got to have nerves of steel. Because think, say, bishop d2, maybe bouncing to b4, then you're never castling, then the rook's never in the game. So instead, Magnus goes for rook c8. We get the explosive c4, protected by the knight, and now he finally spins this one round, preparing to castle, but Jordan interrupts it with a brilliant move here. Look at this. Knight c6. And you can no longer castle, or the knight's going to pounce with check and win the rook on c8. Clean exchange ahead. So what does Magnus do? The only thing he can do, actually, best move, otherwise he's just getting trampled, pawns dropping, he can't develop properly. He takes that one off the board. Therefore, gives an exchange here. Poor rookie in the corner, never got into the game and already gets eaten.
mushrooms.
But Magnus's point is this. After this one swings back, he can not only munch one pawn, but now 2 pawns. And he takes the A pawn, because then he defends this one still. One day it could get dangerous, but this is a great move. You keep tabs on a5. You also look at this check. And now when you run the c pawn, you feel the bishop's kind of the right side of the pawn to escort it down. And it's why Magnus actually has to give up the a pawn now. C pawn was too dangerous. You couldn't just let it advance unchecked. This is how things proceeded. King e7 not the best. an immediate knight d5 was, but that's difficult to calculate. You're in a discovery here, right? Magnus has only got 2 minutes on the clock now. He spent so long earlier, and he's still got 12 moves to make until time control. Check is played. King stepping up. Draw, yes please. Not for you today, Magnus. Jordan wants a big fight. Rook e1 was also a strong idea, but this one goes for bishop d8 check. Magnus, though, fights back with a brilliancy of his own. Knight d5. Now, it doesn't get the exclams, but it's very cool. It arguably should. If you take, well, this is a checkmate, because the knight covers the flight square. This is how it's done, and that's all she wrote. So you can't touch the knight. We therefore see bishop d8 check. Sneaky little idea. Take my bishop, I take your knight with check is the critical thing, and that position's better for white. You've got time to go h3. Pawns under fire. Rooks are very active. So this was played by Magnus. What was better? Don't know. It's telling me king e8's the top move. Maybe you could have looked at king f8, but this looks logical. Not to be on the same colour as the bishop. And now with this discovery threatened, you're basically getting mated, almost, or you're walking to d7 and walking into this check, unless you make a flight square, and that's why Magnus goes f6. Not f5, by the way, because then bishop g5 discovered check was possible, and you can win the knight, and with the bishop on g5, you cover c1. That's why Magnus gave this pawn. That's why he now escapes with the king like this. Bishop g5's on the board. Now you can take it, but again, the problem is rook takes knight here. You're no longer covering the king's square. The checkmating pattern doesn't work. So this was played by Magnus. Best move. This bishop now saves itself, spinning to a new diagonal. And best for Magnus here is jump back, cemento everything. But he plays pawn h6, low on time. Not the best way. His king now gets driven to the back rank, where it's less safe. Jordan makes some room for his king. Rook b5, rook h2, sorry, king h2. This one now jumps back. Rook d3 and rook c5. Apparently rook b1 better, but this is move 40. They've made time control. Such a big battle still to come here. Oh, and by the way, it'd be amiss of me not to mention at this point, if you want to learn your endgame stuff, do check out Lotus Chess. It's the only chess app I know out there that not only does the openings, but the end games too. Steps you through how to actually defend those rook and pawn end games, or win them if you're on the other side of it. So good. I absolutely love it. It's addictive. It's like a game. You don't even feel like you're learning. Do check it out. Link is down below. Let's crack on here. Jordan hits that pawn, and Magnus now defends laterally with the rook. Hits the right rook, swings over, about to crash through here, and that's why knight h5. This rook's got to move. Exchange offered. Magnus doesn't want it. Rook c2, king h7. What a game this is. Jordan playing with this incredible patience right now, probing, squeezing, trying to do to Magnus what he's done to others for a decade plus. This knight jumps in, and Jordan just carries on the fight here, offering another exchange. Magnus now defends the e-pawn through tactical means. You know, if takes, then you lose a rook. But Jordan, right back at him, plays the epic move. Bishop d4. And now, if you don't exchange the rooks, the pawn is going to drop. If you try and eat the bishop, then your rook drops. And that's why Magnus does take. Bishop recaptures and knight h4. It's a critical moment. Jordan with a decent advantage. His best move here is actually pawn g4. Because then after check, you can play king g3. Pawn g3 doesn't work because now after check, you can't go king g3. Let's say king h1. You know, you can't step there. And you drop this pawn, and with it, your advantage. So no g3. This was best, but played in the game. Bishop d2. It's the second best move. You give this pawn, but you activate the king. Pawn e4 is now played. You know, it was attacked and about to drop. And although it looks like Magnus is holding everything together, these knights are kind of clumsy, glued to each other. These knights, as Hikaru would say. The rook activates. King g8, rook a4, pawn's about to drop. That's why it advances, and Jordan uses another little tactic. Bishop takes. Knight takes. This one's no longer got a supporter, and we reach this final stage of the game. Magnus fighting for the draw here. Jordan fighting to somehow trap that knight if he can. Maybe win some pawns and then use his rook to checkmate. But the big question really is, can Magnus hold on to his knight? You know, if you go to the wrong squares, you get checked and you lose it. If you go to the wrong corners, you get boxed in and you lose it, because then the king marches over and eats it. This is the big test now. We're going to have to ignore the bar because it bounces around and goes nuts so much in this endgame. 1 minute it's winning, next minute it's drawing. It's way beyond human understanding at times, to be honest, unless you sit there and click for absolutely ages. Jordan's now doing well, now he's not. You see what I mean? Let's keep going with the game here. Knight's under fire. We're soon going to reach a critical moment. Magnus gets his pawns running. Knight a3 is excellent. Rook d4. Little dance goes on here. But in just a moment, the unthinkable happens. This rook probing some more, and we reach this moment. Move 79. Magnus has a choice. Where to put the knight, and he chooses the wrong square. If you go to a7 with the knight, it looks so counterintuitive because the knight's now boxed in, but it is the best way to go because the king doesn't have time to come over and eat it. Black will win this pawn and push these pawns, and it creates enough counterplay, right? You have to be careful. You could even end up losing if you overpress, right? That's a winning idea. Drawing idea. Magnus puts the knight here. And the massive problem with this is that after king f5, you can't take this pawn like you want to do because simply check. This is why the knight shouldn't be on a3. You lose it, and with it the game. The rook and king can gobble up these pawns. They won't become queens. So this is the problem. This is why Magnus goes knight b1. Rook c2 was played. Knight a3. More bouncing. Game's now back to a draw apparently, but it's so far from obvious when you start clicking. Let's just carry on with the moves. Magnus pushes, of course, to liquidate that pawn, but the big problem he's got is that his king is now in a poor position. Checkmate in one is threatened, so he has to run away, and his knight's kind of boxed in. Rook a2 was played. Not the best, but fine. On the board, rook c2. Apparently knight b6 is leading to a draw, but it's nuts. Magnus goes knight a3, and now after rook c3, if you go to b5 with the knight, you run into this check and lose it. So Magnus goes to b1, and this was the final move of the game. Magnus resigns because the knight has no moves. If the pawn pushes, well, you can take it with the king. And the big problem is that then the white king is going to march all the way around and eat the knight. And the black king's so far away, you can't stop it. If the black king steps away, you eat the pawn. Then you run over and eat the knight. If you stay with the pawn to keep the counterplay, then there's rook d1. And you not only threaten to win the knight, but you threaten checkmate in one. This is the problem. Black would have to give ground. You lose the knight, and with it the game. Unbelievable. Magnus hasn't lost, apparently according to the old Google, since January 2023 to Nodebek Abdusatorov at Tartar Steel. If my source is to be believed as correct, that's about what, 39, 40 months. Unreal scenes. What a game by Jordan. Better all the way. Took it home. Magnus a little bit rusty. Can't be playing that Najdorf if you haven't done your homework. Hope you enjoyed this one. Do check out Lotus Chess. It's fantastic. And have a look at the video on the screen if you want to see another epic game of chess. Cheers.